Good morning, everybody. Outside Kinnick Stadium, it's Bison game day as North Dakota State set to match up with Iowa, the reigning Big Ten West Division champion. Along with Fargo, Big E, Eric Peterson, and Jeff Kolpack, I'm Dom Izzo. We have reached game day, gentlemen. It's already pretty festive down here outside Kinnick Stadium at bright and early at 20 after 7 in the morning. Jeffrey, early kickoff. I don't know if that affects NDSU. They've been pretty good at the 11 a.m. kickoff over the last 3 years. I believe 6-0. This will be the 7th time they're playing this early.
You know, I think there's something about the 11 a.m. kickoff or tip-off, what may you have with the underdog. You look at the NDSU-Wisconsin men's basketball several years ago. That was 11 a.m. tip-off. And then you have the kickoffs with the Gophers. It's just something about if you could get something different. You know, if you can do something a little off the wall. An 11 a.m. kickoff, it's a little off the wall if you think about it.
Everything's moved up earlier. Of course, the last time NDSU played an FBS opponent was against a team from Iowa State, 11 a.m. kickoff. We know how it started, and we certainly know how it ended.
Well, this is a whole different beast here. They can't start out 14-0 down like they were at Iowa State. They're going to have to come out early, play well, try to sustain some drives. They can't go 3 and out on the first 2 or 3 drives and let this crowd get into it. So a fast start's going to be huge for NDSU this morning.
All right, biggest key as you look at this matchup between these two teams.
Well, certainly right at the line of scrimmage. How can it not be? You have these two physical teams that match up physical-wise. Okay, we'll see how they do over the course of 4 quarters. I really think this is a great test of the top of the FBS versus the top of the FCS. You don't often get these kind of matches when you have the best of both worlds.
Offensive line for Iowa is huge. They love to move the pile, much like NDSU does. How does NDSU's defensive line try and counteract what the Hawkeyes are going to try and do today?
You know, I think a guy like Nate Tangway, he'll match up well. The defensive ends, Ambrosius and Menard, are fine. But it's going to be the depth. Are the Tuska's going to come in and add depth? You know, behind Steidel and Tangway, what depth do they have there? Do we see more of Caleb Butler to there? And then even the front 7, the linebackers. How healthy is Nick DeLuca? Last week he played with the bad shoulder. Can he do it again today against a more physical team? Last week was more of a finesse game, but with a power running game, how is Nick DeLuca going to hold up in the middle?
I also look at Desmond King, who is a tremendous cornerback, and how he's going to affect how Easton Stick wants to go to the air today.
Well, they have that advantage. They can put those corners on an island there because they're good enough to do that, and then probably concentrate on the NDSU running game. It's a tough task. NDSU is going to need some just wacky stuff to happen. A couple turnovers, Iowa to come out flat, those kinds of things.
I also wonder here about, we've talked about quick starts and how Iowa has been able to do that over the last 2 games, obviously, with their opponents against Miami, Ohio, and, of course, against Iowa State. We talked about this earlier in the week. If NDSU falls behind, as Biggie was just alluding to, if they fall behind by 14 or 17, how do they stop that avalanche without it getting out of hand?
Well, that's a great point because this is a downhill running team. You give them a lead, and all they're going to do is pound. They're going to pound the rock. They're going to eat up time. Does that sound familiar?
I also look at injuries on this front. We don't know, honestly, who's healthy, who will play today. Chris Kleiman was really tight-lipped about who is going to be in his starting, especially in his starting secondary after the game with Eastern Washington.
Yeah, the biggest concern has to be the secondary. I mean, last week they got thrown on for a lot of yards by Eastern Washington. Then Robbie Grimsley left that game with a concussion. Eric Bachmeyer and Jalen Winbush left that game for undisclosed injuries. I mean, if you're talking 3 of those guys can't go, then you're really have to test your depth, and that would be huge to come into the stadium losing 3 of your maybe top 5 or 6 defensive backs.
What's the one thing NDSU has to do today to win the football game?
Well, you have to somehow control the running game. If you remember, let's go back to 2003 in Montana. They still had that running game going in the second half when they're down 24-2. Gopher games, when they won, they ran the ball. K-State, that big drive at the end, they were running the ball still. So they got to find some semblance of a running game. And that's the offensive line now. They have to have a better game than they have in the first 2 games. Austin Coonert coming back. That could help them in that regard.
I look at special teams, too. In these kind of games, we need to pull off an upset. They have to be huge.
Well, it's different, though. There's no Ben LeCompte and nothing against Jackson Kuntz, but he hasn't been able to perform to that level. You know, even Adam Keller made big kicks in this game. Is there good? I think maybe Bruce Anderson has to emerge in that kick return spot. You know, guys like Ryan Smith, Marcus Williams in these games made some big impacts in that special teams. Bruce Anderson, I think, has to make a play in the kickoff return game.
All right. We're abbreviated today with the early kickoff back in the old school days, like we used to do these things. So let's do some predictions. What do you got for me here?
For today?
Yeah.
Well, here, hold on to this mic.
Okay. We have multiple mics, and I'm still hanging on to stuff for you.
I gotta use my hands here, Dom.
You're pulling out. Oh, what is this? Oh, it's really?
Farm
This
tough.
is coming out already, huh?
Let's return to Farm Tough, Dom. This game is going to be won in the line of scrimmage. Hey, Iowa's a big farm state. The only problem with NDSU, like, hold the brakes, Dom, or pop the clutch, or pump the brakes.
Yes.
Iowa has got a lot of John Deere stuff in this state, so the Farm Tough edge does not go to NDSU this time. Iowa Hawkeyes 35, NDSU 17. NDSU gets beat at its own Farm Tough game today. Too much up front for the Hawkeyes.
I agree with you in terms of how they run the football. I think this is a team that played on New Year's Day last year, and I know it did not go well for them against Stanford, but they still have they have 14 guys back from this team, and G. Taylor told us yesterday they are playing, to use a good Craig Bowl term, with a hard edge. They've got a chip on their shoulder. I think they come out. I think the Bison don't get blown out of this game. I think Iowa wins 31-17.
Well, welcome to the real FBS world,
right.
North Dakota State University, because this is a real FBS game for the first time, I think. Exactly. I mean, Kansas State was semi-farm tough.
Yeah.
These guys are really farm tough, and I don't think it's going to go well for the visitors. Being hurt is not going to help. 2 overtime games is not going to help. Think about it. NDSU's played 10 quarters, essentially. Iowa starters have played maybe half that.
I was going to say 6.
Yeah, that's a tough deal. I have Iowa by 2 to 3 touchdowns, 38-17.
Going to be a great day inside. We'll come back and wrap everything up on the post-game show. Complete highlights and reaction coming up on Channel 6. Kolpack and Izzo about to start in about 25 minutes. Make sure you join us on 970 WDAY. We'll see you after the game.